As the snowboard season has officially started, I've got to do a little something to spice up this snowboard. I picked it up used last year, got a few trials on it, but it's seen some better days, not only on the top surface, but some of these edges. So I've got a little couple ideas in mind to add some stickers to it and design it up. Not the biggest fan of the overall style to the board. The center of the board looks pretty nice, but these ends, splash is a little overdone, so gonna be doing the best I can to add some different patterning on top of that. So I've got my plotter lined up. Let's check out some of the designs I've got in mind. So I had a preliminary idea here to take a bunch of throw-ups and kind of mix them into this big circular pattern. My goal was to keep it as uniform as I could with that whole circle outline, but then also kind of tailor in a bunch of different names from a bunch of you guys. Back maybe November-ish, I reached out on Instagram and had it open-ended, send me your name and I'll try to squeeze it into this design. And I got a couple hundred, honestly, people saying, go ahead, feel free to use my name. So I was able to squeeze in about 60 names throughout the whole thing. Can't quite count up how many layers I ended up doing, but came out to probably about 6 or 8 layers and all varying in sizes. So I like the idea of starting with kind of a small and densely packed throw up in the center and then slowly growing that as the kind of orbit design grew as well. So my big idea here was, let's make this a huge poster to start off with. I figured it'd be easier to draw all the names in there, as well as I figured that it would be a nice piece afterwards. I can frame it up and work with the original drawing, even though I did that first preliminary sketch in my sketchbook. I felt there that everything was a little crammed in there. I wanted to go big and make sure that everything was extra fresh on this. So right now I haven't done much with the final piece, but it sits 24 by 24 inches more or less. That was the size of the circle I ended up using. Or it might have even been a touch smaller because I know my paper was 24 by 24 wide. So to actually make the orbit, I started in with a ruler just to mark the center, and then I went around with somewhat of a compass style. So I took another ruler that had a kind of center hole punch, I tacked that into the center, and then I used basically a binder clip and a pencil to run that all the way around and get myself a perfect circle. Now these were just kind of guides to get the whole layout of each section of throwie, so I maybe did 2-inch spacing on the widest one, and then slowly brought that into maybe down to about 1 inch for each throw up. So I just did a bunch of steps in there so I was able to keep that circular pattern without having to worry about trailing off or not keeping it circular. Now this was essential. I really liked the way the design came out in that I was able to stay within these lines. And granted, some tops and bottoms of letters might have ran over top of these sections, but altogether it helps keep that as uniform as possible, because I did play around with some other variations of this design afterwards where it kind of warped and added some drips in there, and even the slightest warp to the circle setup really kind of gave the viewer a strange perspective on this. I really didn't like how the eye trained around it with a kind of big drip coming off the bottom or whatnot. It really worked a lot better keeping everything pretty much uniform, and although some letters, like I said, jumped above and below those lines, keeping the majority of them in that center section kept the design symmetric, and I was really happy with the outcome there. After penciling everything in, obviously went back with some Sharpie and just went over each of those lines, darkening some up, adding a little bit of 3D into some of these letters as well so you can get some more contrast on there. And then I really had no plan to color this in paper. Right now it still stands, it's just the black and white. And then I digitally colored it, just a much faster process, as well as gave my crisp lines and perfect fills as well. So I really didn't have a need to do that. Maybe someday I'll go back and do that, but that's plenty of hours to go back in and actually set that up. So I was more than happy just to hit it with the Sharpie, take a nice clean photo of it, and then work from there in Photoshop. The whole Photoshop process is really straightforward. I basically just selected all the black and then selected similar shading to that, so it picked up everything, no issue. Threw a little bit of smoothing on top of there so it cleaned up my lines a touch on the backdrop, and then basically just went in and filled each of those sections with each of the colors. Now granted, I did go up and clean in some of those filled sections just to make sure that each of those were smooth and I was selecting the right section. So I also went in and split out each of those fills afterwards. So I took all the blue selections, made them all into an individual layer, so that could be both screen printed later on for the hoodies and stuff I was planning on, but then also with the plotter I could then just send those profiles for each color out, and then I could also consolidate them and fit a bunch of them onto like a single or 2 sheets of the same color, so when I'm plotting them I don't have to do the whole pattern. I can section it out and then individually cut out each of those names. These hoodies and shirts were a ton of fun to put together. There was a ton of colors in the print, so I had to go outside of my resources and get some other shop to print them up. There was 7 colors total, so that was way beyond my means, and ended up getting all those put together, a few months back. If you saw them on Instagram, I promoted them pretty heavily over there and was excited to, announce them and release them over there. And those all flew very fast. And since I haven't quite promoted them here on YouTube, I figured this video is going to be a perfect opportunity to do a little redesign and rehash of the project. So I definitely don't formally restock any design one-to-one. I like to switch it up every time I put out some new work. So here you're going to see a slight variation to the design. Added a couple very subtle drips on the side hit up as well as on the side front piece. And that way the people that jumped in on the very original design are going to have a unique piece to that first set. And these that are redesigned slightly, you'll see that they're coming from that second reissue. I had quite a few people hit me up on YouTube saying that they wish they had a chance to get in on them and that they kind of missed the whole Instagram drop. So by all means, this is a great opportunity to snag a couple more while they're still here. And ultimately, I was super hyped with the design, so I could figure I could use another set for myself so I can continue to paint in one and keep one clean for the day-to-day. These will be available on my web shop for a short while, so if you're interested in them, go check it out over there. I'll leave a link directly to them in the description of the video as well, so you can jump right over there. Alright, back to the snowboard efforts. So I first had to lay up a full layer of black sticker on top of my board. The way I designed the whole piece was to have the black layer kind of fill in the entire background and then lay the throwies on top individually and leave kind of the area where the outline would be as that black layer in the background. So you'll see the throw ups on top of this are all kind of just the fill section. That allows the lower black layer to actually come through as that outline. I figured this would work well for 2 reasons. One, it would give me a smooth surface to work on, as well as it would give me a full uniform black layer to kind of cover up that background design. If I were to go in and try to individually have the outline to each of these layers, that would be a super thin section of vinyl, and that would probably aid into these kind of cracking and peeling up, or even just getting scraped up because of the small amount of sticker that's actually down on the board. So having a huge consistent surface of the black for all the other stickers to stick to, as well as having the larger fill section actually being the majority of the portion of the sticker, works super well for this to survive all season on snow. So based on how large I had cut out all these vinyl decals, I had an idea about where I needed to center my throw ups. So I picked the very most center throw up and then slowly started tiling up each consecutive ring outside of that, around and around, and then slowly built up all the letters all together. Alignment was pretty tough between all of these. I had some layers skewed a little bit and then some, throw ups kind of pulling into other ones. I basically went back in with the X-Acto knife and cut out anywhere that I needed the outline to actually come through. This was a unforeseen bonus of having the black in the background. I was able to, have layers go on top of each other where they weren't supposed to, and then just cut away where their outline should be, and then just keep moving forward and have the next layer go right on top of that. So there was some free form kind of on the spot variation with this design, but altogether I was super happy with how each of these layers kind of put up with one another. And then I even cut away some of the extra kind of negative area in between some of these sections, so you can see some very small details of the original snowboard below all the throwies. Now, I'm very familiar with how durable vinyl stickers are, but I was really thinking that I would have at least some beat up on these edges throughout the entire season. I've already gotten on the mountain like 18 times this season, and needless to say, all the stickers are holding up super great. My edges, I don't see any peeling at all. I maybe had to pick off a couple little sections where there was a little straggler starting, and I just wanted to cut it loose so it wouldn't peel up more of the sticker. But ultimately, all these videos of me snowboarding are pretty much from this last week where I've been snowboarding it on it. You know, that was my 18th time on the mountain, so needless to say, these are holding up great. Super happy with it. The only ones that were a little bit troublesome were the holographic shells. Those are the side shell material that I have for, you know, blank stickers and whatnot, and I thought those would be cool to cut out. Those really didn't do well with all the ice and the snow and the melting. You can see as the snowboard kind of froze and then warmed back up again and it was contracting, you can see kind of a spider crack coming in through those, and then even the ice seemed to wash into that holographic kind of top layer a little bit, so now it's kind of a burnt gray almost, not quite super holographic anymore. But ultimately, if all I have to do is recut 2 or 3 words every year, that seems like a pretty good deal for the amount of work that I kind of set up with this to begin with. Now, I can't say I have any other plans for the rest of the board. I don't know if you caught it at the beginning, but I teased the idea of doing the whole throw-ups all over top of this, or maybe a spiral version of the orbit where it kind of traced back and forth on the board, but pretty happy with as it is. Maybe I can come up with something next year to give up the backside and touch that up a little bit. And ultimately, like I said, super happy with the quality of it. Definitely made for a better season on the board, as it wasn't my favorite top nonetheless. Even got a few comments on the mountain asking what kind of a branded board that is. So that was always fun to have a little conversation about putting it together with some other people on the mountain. I can't thank all the artists enough that allowed me to put their names and throw-ups in this mix. A ton of you guys supported on that first batch, so I thank you as well on that front. It was great to kind of also give back to the community into this fun project. And then rather than just writing random names, it was awesome to get a bunch of mix in here and kind of communicate with people and see how they ended up liking my interpretation of their name. Now, I was cramming so many names in there, I had to do even some split colors. So some names might start in one color and end in another, just as kind of how I was filling out the design. So ultimately, this was a fun project to work with a bunch of different artists on, as well as put together on a few different mediums. Like I mentioned in the middle of the video, I put together a few more of these hoodies and t-shirts, so if you dig the design a lot and you want to show some support to the channel, check them out on my web shop. They'll be over there for a few weeks or until I sell out. The shirts and hoodies will always come with a handful of stickers and bonus extras. Now, I can't say it enough that all the support through the web shop really does help to make more of these videos and more content like this. I was super happy that I'm able to, you know, put videos back and forth and get the community moving with doing projects like this that also involve the community quite a bit. So it's great to see everything working together and everybody slowly growing up and making more out of everything that we can with this art. Hope you enjoyed the video, and maybe check out some of the other stuff I've been posting on the channel recently. Ton of sticker related videos, going through a ton of sticker submissions, as well as I've got a huge mural project coming up this Saturday, so keep an eye out for that. Kinda teased it a touch towards the middle of this video, so maybe you could check out or brainstorm what the content might be for that coming out real quick. Once again, thanks everybody for the support. It's really gonna do it for me. Peace.